This is CBC Vancouver News.
Putting a big promise into action.
Will enable us to fast-track our old-growth protection work.
BC has signed a historic $1 billion nature conservation agreement to protect at-risk ecosystems. Plus, supporters march in solidarity.
We are building a movement to fight the right and to say the drug war has got to end.
Denouncing the recent arrests of Vancouver's safe drug supply advocates. And the family of a 9-year-old who died after suffering an asthma attack made worse by wildfire smoke speaks out.
He was such an amazing kid and so small and so mighty, and even after his death, he's still able to be that way.
Their goal to raise awareness of the hidden dangers of wildfires. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. A controversial RCMP unit in BC is getting hundreds of complaints, and the RCMP is rejecting a majority of them. The Community Industry Response Group was created to police resource protests in the province, and it gained notoriety for controversial standoffs. The Fifth Estate's Stephen D'Souza reports.
Coming down! No, you're not!
Protesters say it's like a paramilitary force. The RCMP's Community Industry Response Group has been at the heart of some of the most intense protests in recent Canadian history. Created in 2017, it's been on the front lines of anti-pipeline and anti-logging protests in BC. The unit has been accused of improper arrest and use of force and violating protesters' civil rights. Since 2019, there have been 560 complaints against the unit after protests in Wet'suwet'en and Fairy Creek. The complaints go to an independent body, the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, the CRCC. But the RCMP gets first crack at reviewing the allegations.
I would say 99% of the complaints go over to the RCMP for them to investigate. So whether they choose to informally resolve it or investigate it is left up to the RCMP.
A new analysis by the Fifth Estate shows what's happened to some of those complaints. Currently, the RCMP has investigated 181 allegations filed from Fairy Creek, the majority claiming improper attitude, improper use of force, and neglect of duty. So far, the RCMP has rejected 86% of the allegations. Has there been any breaches found?
Yes, so there have been public complaints that have been upheld. Some members have acted out verbally in an unprofessional manner. They've been dealt with. Absolutely they have.
Meanwhile, the CRCC is conducting a systemic review of CURG. It won't look at complaints, but things like training and policies and procedures.
I'm not optimistic that the CRCC is going to be able to adequately investigate the RCMP's CURG division.
I don't think that they have any real teeth to do anything. I think that there needs to be political will to actually make some drastic changes.
While the RCMP continues investigating complaints and awaits the review from the independent watchdog, the BC government has already committed to funding CURG for the next 3 years. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
BC, Ottawa, and First Nations leaders have announced a landmark conservation partnership. The agreement comes with $1 billion in funding to protect at-risk ecosystems. As John Hernandez reports, the announcement was applauded by conservationists who say it's time now to put the big promise into action.
I believe it's a special moment in time.
At sunrise, an historic pledge to protect a significant swath of BC wilderness.
We have a sacred duty to do our utmost to protect the land, to nurture the land.
BC, Ottawa, and First Nations leaders coming together for a tripartite agreement worth $1 billion. $500 million from both levels of government to protect 30% of BC's land and waters by 2030.
It will enable us to fast-track our old-growth protection work. It will enable us to protect habitat for species that are at risk.
The agreement consists largely of previously announced funding, including dollars for watershed security and land restoration. That money will now be made accessible to Indigenous-led conservation efforts.
Why are we here? You know, we see Lytton burning down. We've seen what happened in the Shuswap and the Okanagan. We've seen Samat Hatsa, which is Sumas Lake, return to the Fraser Valley and the Stalo lands.
But I think fundamentally, we need to be a part of the decision-making process.
It is substantial. It's bigger than anything else that's ever come along.
The agreement received widespread praise by BC conservationists, particularly for what it might mean for vulnerable old-growth stands.
There is a subset of the fund specifically designed to protect the most at-risk old growth in the coastal and inland temperate rainforests.
Still, critics note the funding can only go so far without detailing exactly which areas will be protected, which they say is what's needed next.
If you don't have ecosystem-based targets to correctly aim protection, then what you do, what you get is basically, it's like sending in the fire brigade to hose down all the houses that aren't burning while largely ignoring the houses on fire.
An ambitious plan, and if it all comes to fruition, BC will double the area of protected lands and waters in just 7 years. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hundreds of people marched through the streets of the downtown east side earlier this afternoon. The crowd is denouncing the recent arrests of the founders of the Drug User Liberation Front. Yasmin Gandam has more on why protesters are calling this a crackdown.
People holding signs and marching down Hastings Street in downtown Vancouver demanding safe supply. Carmen Best was amongst the gathering.
Free the people who've been arrested, the founders of Dolph, and that they can go back to like what they were doing. It's just that we need it. It's like if people don't have access, then they're just going to die in the streets.
This comes just over a week after Vancouver police officers raided the Drug User Liberation Front's offices. The raids were conducted after Dolph was questioned about how it had been paying to buy and test drugs for its members as part of its Compassion Club program. According to organizers, Dolph purchased its drugs off the dark web, then sent them to labs at the University of British Columbia and University of Victoria for purity testing. The drugs were then sold at cost to the club's 42 members. The two people arrested were Eris Nix and Jeremy Calicum, who co-founded Dolph. Speakers gathered in Victory Square to condemn the arrests.
Today, we are building a movement to fight the right and to say the drug war has got to end.
BC United earlier this week called for both a criminal investigation and breach of ethics investigation at both the BC Centre on Substance Abuse and UVic. But for some at the rally today, the issue is close to home, and they say it's time for safe supply despite the legal barriers.
It's not drugs that are killing people, it's the poison street drugs that are killing people, and that if people have a safe supply, they live.
The demonstration comes days after an expert panel led by BC's chief coroner recommended the province massively expand its safe supply program, arguing offering clean drugs without a prescription would be the safest way to cut down on toxic drug deaths. Vancouver police have said people who violate the criminal code can face enforcement and criminal charges. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Langara College instructor has been placed on leave following comments she made about the Israel-Hamas war. We are about to show you a video of instructor Natalie Knight speaking at a Vancouver rally in support of Palestinians a few days ago. Knight was speaking about a prison break from 2 years ago when she pivoted to talking about Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th. Her comments have offended and outraged members of the Jewish community. Take a listen.
2 years ago in September of 2021, 6 political prisoners dug their escape out of a maximum security prison using only spoons. Amazing! This was a feat of determination and ingenuity, only eclipsed by the amazing offensive waged on October 7th.
Langara College says Knight's comments do not represent the views of the school. It says she will remain on leave while the matter is being investigated, adding that it's committed to building an inclusive and welcoming environment. We've done plenty of stories about the dangers of wildfire smoke, but no family knows the risk and tragic consequences more than the Vi family of 100 Mile House. Back in July, 9-year-old Carter Vi died after suffering an asthma attack made worse by the smoky conditions. Now they're telling their story and trying to raise awareness of the hidden dangers of wildfires. Sarah Penton, host of Radio West, spoke to Carter's parents earlier this week.
I know you guys got a million things going on, and I just want to say thank you very much, because putting yourself out there publicly the way you have has been pretty brave. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Last week, Carter was playing outside in the morning and seemed fine. His parents say the wildfire smoke worsened as the day went on. By dinner time, he was coughing uncontrollably. Carter died at 7:20 that night. BC's coroner confirms wildfire smoke was a factor in Carter's death. This case has now sparked a provincial safety bulletin warning of the dangers of wildfire smoke.
I want to know how you guys are doing. It's been 3.5 months since Carter passed away. How have you been?
It's been tough. We just kind of go day by day, one foot in front of the other, and try to live our best lives for him and for our other 2 kids and keep it all together and
just go through the motions. That's the best as you can do.
How old are your other 2 kids?
Cadence is 14 and Daxton's 11. Carter was kind of the glue, I guess. Being the baby brother, without him there, they've kind of grown a lot stronger together, because you don't have that little brother to poke and prod, and at the same time they don't have that one-on-one time with him, so they've taken to each other a lot more, which is nice to see.
How have you guys been remembering Carter?
It doesn't feel real. Carter was so into music and dance. We've created a playlist on Spotify, and that's going continuously in my truck day in, day out.
We talk about him every single day. I write about him every day. We look at pictures of him every single day and tell stories about him. And even last night when we were walking through downtown Vancouver, the cool cars and the sounds and all the people and all the buildings and stuff, the lights, he would have thought it was the coolest thing. And to be right close to where like the big soccer games happen and that kind of stuff, he would have really loved it.
I understand he was a big soccer fan, huh? And you guys went back and coached his team over the summer.
Yeah, he loved soccer. We weren't sure we were going to after he passed, but we decided that he would have wanted us to go back, and our team was absolutely incredible. So happy to have us, and even every time they see us in town or at school, they all run up and give us both big hugs. And we won our final game, and they did a amazing tribute, and they bought us all jerseys that they had Carter's name put on the back and his number, and the entire team had them on. They all took off their regular soccer jerseys to show us these special Carter jerseys, and they all played in Carter's name and his number that day.
When you look back now after you've had some time to have things register, how do you remember that time and those circumstances?
You know, the day that he passed, it wasn't even that bad of a day. The smoke had, for the most part, cleared out. It's not uncommon to have to take Carter in once a month or once every 2 months to the hospital to get topped up on oxygen levels, right? I carried him out to the truck to have Amber take him to the hospital. I didn't really think it was too serious at that time. Kind of caught me off guard. I just didn't see this one coming.
We checked the air quality monitoring system that we had available to us. There was no smoke, you couldn't smell smoke, so we figured it was an okay day to take the kids. Even up until half an hour before he started having an asthma attack, if someone had asked me, how's Carter? I would have said he's great. He's had a great day. We had fun. He didn't have to use his puffer when we were at the park. And being a family that was so on top of Carter's asthma, and even himself being so on top of it, I don't think he saw it coming either. Our information in 100 Mile either comes from Williams Lake or Kamloops, both places which are very far from 100 Mile, and the weather difference between even different parts of 100 Mile can be so different. Never mind between Williams Lake and 100 Mile. It's like a whole different weather system. So it wasn't accurate. If we had air quality monitoring throughout our town, it would have told us that there was something in the air that wasn't safe, and we wouldn't have gone outside at all that day.
And that is why we're talking, why you've made the trip to Vancouver. Because the BC Lung Association has actually launched a project in Carter's name. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So the goal is to start in 100 Mile, and we're raising money to bring 100 air quality monitoring systems and put them throughout 100 Mile House. We're going to teach people how to make personal air purifying systems, how to use the air quality monitoring systems properly, and what the information actually means. And then from our town, it's going to go to other towns throughout BC. And I have also heard that other provinces have asked to continue the Carter's project farther away from BC. We're super proud that we can do this in his name.
But what stood out to me the most was the family themselves. Almost immediately, they stood up and said, "We want to do something about this. We want to ensure that other British Columbians get the help that they need so this doesn't happen for them."
Our goal with Carter's project is to help save lives so that other families don't have to go through what we're going through. Carter's project will change lives. We will make sure of it. He was such an amazing kid, and so small and so mighty, and even after his death, he's still able to be that way.
I think Carter would have moved mountains regardless, and we're just super proud to help him move mountains, even though he's not here.
Carter's project raised about $70,000 last night at a gala here in Vancouver. But if you're looking to contribute to the fund, donations are still needed. You can head to the BC Lung Foundation's website to find out how you can help. This weekend, BC Place will see a sea of orange jerseys for the CFL Western semi-final game, and the Whitecaps host its first MLS Cup playoffs match since 2017. Those details coming up after the break. Thank you for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Students at a Prince Edward Island school were given a challenge, updating school signs to make them more accessible for visually impaired students. Take a look at how their volunteerism paid off.
Kind of walking around the school, seeing the end result. It's definitely cool seeing your finished product up there. Definitely, it's an accomplishment.
The signs in the school weren't the greatest because they were small. Right, and it was difficult for visually impaired people to read them, which is terrible, because how are they going to get around?
Multiple students with visual impairments, current and future, will be coming through this building. So it's really important to make sure that the environment is set up for everybody that comes through here.
We were supposed to make signs that were readable for anyone.
We were kind of set free to kind of spout out ideas and what we were going to do. Definitely nice that they trust you enough and think you're good enough, I guess, to fix a problem.
When you look around and when you walk through the building, none of the kids, none of the staff refer to the rooms by number, they refer to it by the teacher's name. So that was brought up as a bit of a challenge, and these kids and the teacher, Ryan Casey, thought, you know what, I'll bet you we could do something about that.
Our way of fixing this was by making the signs movable. So instead of just having a static sign, they're like using parts, in 3 parts, that we can change. The class number will usually stay the same, but the teacher's name may not. So we can take out the name and put in a new name or swap the name if the teacher moves.
And they did some research as well to find out what kinds of things needed to be put in place in order for it to work. So they relied heavily on accepted standards there, using the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, as a basis, and started from there, and then went above and beyond to make sure that it was as accessible as it could possibly be for all the kids here.
We needed like a bigger sign for everybody so that you could see the room number and their name, and in Braille so you could feel it out and know what class you're going to.
We put in a couple designs and ideas for how we're going to lock in the parts, and eventually we settled on one design that we decided to implement.
Oh, it's a totally elegant solution. What they've produced, what they've come up with is something that, in my view, is better than anything that I've seen that's commercially available.
It's definitely nice. Like, they can easily get around the school, and it's, I don't know, I feel like it would be a better experience at school, not kind of wandering around being like, where am I? So it's nice to see that everybody can get to their class easily.
BC Place is gearing up to welcome a sea of orange jerseys tomorrow as the BC Lions prepare to face off against the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL Western semi-final game. The Lions were victorious over the Calgary football team in the 2022 Western semi-final, and fans who are hoping for the same outcome will flock to BC Place tomorrow for the 3:30 kickoff. This weekend is double stacked with sporting events. On Sunday, the Vancouver Whitecaps will host its first MLS Cup playoffs match since 2017. They will face off against the Los Angeles FC in an elimination game that has drawn enough attention to open the upper bowl of BC Place. And here we have a shot of Science World and BC Place lit up and sparkling bright. Up next, Darius Madavi will bring us a look at the weekend weather and what we need to know for daylight saving time.
CFL's big game is being played this weekend. Vancouver, home of the BC Lions, and host to the team from Baltimore, the first American one ever to play in the Grey Cup. It's an historic event, but as Ian Hannamansing found around town today, it's hard to see the enthusiasm.
On the streets of Vancouver today, there wasn't much to show the big game is just 2 days away. These football fans from Calgary certainly stood out, though. Some of them have traveled to the last 5 Grey Cup games and say the pregame mood in Vancouver seems a little muted.
The last couple of Cups, Winnipeg and Calgary were, I think, a lot more festive than this one.
Even in the elevator today, they were saying, oh, you guys are from Calgary, yeah. Is there a big game on tonight or something? It's like, no, Sunday is like a Grey Cup, so. In the bigger centers, it's not quite as popular.
At this souvenir store on busy Robson Street, Grey Cup shirts are not selling very well.
The Grey Cup is, I don't know why this seems slow.
If there's one part of Grey Cup that's been an unqualified success so far, it's been ticket sales for the game. As of this afternoon, the best seat available in the house is way up here in level 2, and these seats would cost you $95 each. At least a few hundred of the more than 50,000 people at BC Place will be cheering for Baltimore.
Grey Cup going back to the US of A.
A plane load of American fans arrived in Vancouver at 2:30 this morning. They may have been raised on four-down American football, but now they're saying what Canadian fans have said for years about the CFL.
It's a great game, more exciting. You cannot take your eyes off the field. I went to the bathroom one night and missed 10 points.
But what some Canadians are finding a little less exciting is the possibility of the Cup going to the U.S.
Instead of east-west battle, now we're looking at a north-south border battle, and we won't take too kindly if we lose the Grey Cup down south, I don't think.
The international rivalry is giving the CFL more media exposure in the United States than it's ever had before. Whether that's good for Canadian football is still being debated by its fans. Ian Hadamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi joins us now with our first look at the weather. Darius, what are we looking at when it comes to the weekend weather forecast?
Definitely wetter than we have been, and also getting a bit cooler, very much snowy in the north, which is why we have a snowfall warning actually in place for parts of the piece. We're expecting up to 15 to 20 centimeters of snow up there as the frontal system that brings us rain and heavy winds, hence the wind warning here, moves up into the north over the next right through the weekend, actually. We also have a couple air quality warnings still in place, but the one that was in the Cranbrook area has come down. But Golden and the Boundary region still looking like the air quality isn't the best, just a bit of a haze in the air. Now, if we look earlier today, we did see quite a bit of moisture start to stream over the island. This is at around 2 to 3 p.m. that we started to see that system roll through, which is really why I wanted to take a look on the radar, because that's just the beginnings of that system. The real bulk of it starts to come in overnight tonight. So we start to see, as we get into later tomorrow morning, we get quite a bit of precipitation on the island. And then as we look at the 24 hours after that, you can see that system make its way up to the north and really start to fill in that snow. So I made this run from 2 p.m. today into 2 p.m. Sunday so that we could take a look at just how much rain will fall. And you can see most of the most significant amounts are in the central interior. Tonight, expect those warmer highs on the coast and all that rain starting throughout the province, but the only certainty is really right on the coast. And then you can expect that cloud to continue right through the weekend for most of the province, but especially the coast. But yeah, just keep in mind those really warm lows. And the last thing we should mention is it is daylight savings this weekend. Sunday night at 2 p.m. is when you roll the clocks back an hour, so probably just do it before you go to sleep. And then we can also make sure that you test your smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. This is when it's a good time to do it, just so that you can have that sort of regularity of those 6 months to check your smoke alarms. And you get that extra hour of sleep, which isn't too bad. But fun fact Friday, you can know that farmers are often blamed, they're often tied to daylight savings time, but that's really a myth. Farmers were actually very much against daylight savings time when it was first being implemented back in the 1900s.
Thanks, Darius. That is your late news for this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.